All right, so welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. We are going to talk today about Farming 101. We are going to talk about what is real estate farming or farming as it relates to real estate. We are going to go over a couple of things as far as getting that, how you can establish that farm, what to look for, and then give you some pointers on a plan to roll out a plan and make, if you chose to make this one of your marketing plans. So our agenda for today, is we're going to not work the slideshow. We're going to talk about our goals for today are to first talk about what real estate farming is, and then we're going to discuss how to choose your farm. And yes, it's 11 o'clock, so we are going to do some real estate math as well. So if you don't want to sign up for math, maybe you're not going to be in the right place for that. But we're just going to go over the importance of choosing your farm and what you need to look at to calculate that all out. And then we're going to talk about where, how you can plant the seeds for that farm. And we're going to go through some other marketing techniques that you can do to establish yourself firmly in that farm. And then we are going to go over just a sample campaign, what a campaign could look like as far as touch points. And then finally finishing off with a product that we are proud to introduce to you at Elevate Leverage Services, which is going to be where you can have this farming campaign all done for you. And then the final thing that I have is that my goal is to use as many cheesy farming analogies as I possibly can. So if somebody in the room can keep track of how many I've come up with, my goal is to get to 10. So I'm hoping I can get to that. Is there anything else, or any other topics or things that people were hoping that we would be able to go over today? Awesome. Well, let's start off with what is farming as far as it relates to real estate. So real estate farming is a combination of a consistent marketing as well as prospecting techniques to a specific downside of not having it on the screen as well. Oops, stop the share. Nobody in there?
Oh, is in there?
No.
Oh,
Todd.
Todd.
All right, so farming is a combination of both prospecting and marketing. And if you've read Millionaire Real Estate Agent, you will know that prospecting is what you're actively going out and doing as far as marketing techniques. And marketing is more passive, where those are like postcards, mailers, stuff like that. So a great farm is going to be a combination of both of those techniques. There are two main types of farming that you can do as far as real estate farming. The first one, which is the one we're going to have most of our focus on today, is going to be geographic farming. And that is where you are choosing a specific neighborhood or something, either a geographic location for your farm. And then the second type of farm is going to be a demographic farm. And that would be, we're not going to focus much on that today, but that would be more on if you're focusing on absentee owners or past clients, networking, like your past client sphere of influence, and just targeting them specifically with a farming campaign. That's obviously a great avenue that you should definitely come up with a plan for. And you've seen tons of those, hopefully, as far as your 33 or 36 touch plans. And they both have their pros and their cons. The pros of a geographic farm, in my opinion, is that it's very easy to select that farm. You can say, okay, I'm going to farm exactly this subdivision, and you can just go into the public records and find that information. The downside to it is you don't necessarily right out of the gate know those people as far as what their demographics are. You know what kind of house they have, but you don't know anything else about them. So you don't have an instant kind of connection to those kind of people. And then the flip side of that with your demographic farming would be that the advantage is you can really fine tune your message to those people. So if, as an example, if it's absentee owners, you know everybody you're targeting in that does not live in the house that you're sending them to. So you can target your message specifically that way. The downside of it is it's kind of tougher to touch a demographic farm, especially if it's absentee owner, as an example. You can't have holding an in-person event or an event in a neighborhood. It's not really feasible with absentee owners because they could be anywhere in the country. Question for everybody, and no prize for the answer to this one, but who knows what the MREA budget model for spending on your marketing is? Percentage-wise, as a percentage of GCI. Anybody on Zoom?
Like 60%.
What's that?
Isn't it like 60%?
It is not 60%, no.
So like 10%.
Very close, yes, 9.2. So 9.2 is MREA 1, so when Gary wrote the book in the early 2000s, I want to say, 90s, late 90s, one of those two, 9.2% was what you should be spending on your marketing dollars. Most agents spend a lot less than that, which means they're probably cutting off what the top end of what they could actually make if they were fully spending their marketing budget in there. And remember, that 9.2% still gets you to $1 million. So that's, you know, a way to do that. And yes, it is going up over 10 when MREA 2 ever comes out. And that's mainly because the cost is going up, but also because marketing to your sphere, there's a lot more interrupters in there. So you used to be able to get 6-to-1 return on your past clients in sphere. They're actually moving that up to 10-to-1, just because there's that many interrupters as far as missing your message up with those past clients in sphere. Any questions on what is farming? Awesome. All right, well, we're not going to work again here. All right, so we're going to talk about how to choose your farm and the 5 most important things of what you should be thinking about when you're choosing your farm. Number 1 is going to be your turnover ratio in that farm. If houses don't sell in that farm, then there's no point in marketing to it. And I use an example from one of my old hometowns. I had a really good friend, agent of mine, with Keller Williams as well, that would send out mailers every month to people in my neighborhood. And it was, you know, your standard, hey, look at all these houses I sold. I have a buyer, you know, the standard marketing message that a lot of real estate agents do to farm. And I caught him one day, and I'm like, hey, Brandon, how's that farming doing in my neighborhood? He's like, honestly, Chris, it's not doing that well. I said, yeah, that doesn't surprise me because no one leaves the neighborhood. This neighborhood, there was just no turnover. Like I knew at least 3 families in the neighborhood that inherited the house that they grew up in. So there's just no turnover in it. So he was just spending his money and not getting any kind of return on that. The second thing to think about when choosing your farm is going to be the price point. It doesn't matter if you sell 400 houses in that, well, maybe 400. Doesn't matter if you sell 20 houses in that neighborhood. If the price point doesn't equate to getting a good return on investment, then again, it's not going to be worth it. So you got to look at your price point. The third component to think about when choosing your farm is, what do you know about that geographic farm, if we're specifically talking about geographic farm? Do you know everything in the neighborhood? Do you know where, you know, they should do their shopping? Do you know the schools? What do you know about that neighborhood? That is why so many people naturally gravitate to where they live as their farming location. The fourth thing to think about is going to be the size of the farm. You really want to find that sweet spot is going to be between 200 and no more than 500. You got to have at least 200 for the numbers to kind of make mathematical sense, which is where we're going to do our math here in a few minutes. And then over 500 becomes too large of a farm to kind of maintain, unless you're doing it for a team or multiple agents, where you can kind of get out there and touch the neighborhood very easily. And then the fifth thing to think about when you're choosing a farm is going to be to look at the dominant, is there already a dominant agent in that neighborhood? So if it's a neighborhood, you know, again, say it fits all the rest of the criteria, but there's a dominant agent in there and they don't look like they're going to be going anywhere anytime soon, might want to look another way in that, unless you want to put in the time and the effort to supplant that person that's in there. Or again, if they're an agent who may be nearing the end of their career, hopefully, that may be something else to think about there. So those are the 5 things you want to talk about, you want to think about when you are choosing your farm. Are there any questions on that? And then we're going to break down some of these with the next exercise here. Kim, you need a handout, right? I think Christine, you need one too. You need one too.
And when you're farming an area, if you just wanted to focus on, is it easier to focus on just specific subdivisions or an actual area that's got like a radius of like X amount of miles out?
Yeah, and we'll go over that. That's a great question, Kim. Thank you. We're going to go over that on the couple different ways to do it, and it comes down to a lot of times how you can get the data and how reliable that data is too. And we're going to show you. I'm going to show you how you can find that data, and then some of the drawbacks to that.
Well, we're gonna talk about who maybe the target as in like the length of time they own the home, or, you know, like 5 years versus 25 years.
Yeah, for today, we're not going to go over that. We're focusing today mainly on just a straight up geographic farming. As far as like, so you're gonna, and it becomes easier to just plaster everybody in the neighborhood and not worry about because yeah, if you were doing more of a demographic farm, you would definitely want to look at the time in there, how much they owe. Do they, you know, if you could get a wider radius if you just looked at people who didn't have a mortgage, you know, that lived in the house 25+ years. So that's a great way to do it, absolutely. But for today, we're gonna look at just hitting everybody in a neighborhood. Any other questions? Yes.
Do you stagger your contacting, maybe send out a third of your mailer 1 week and then another third another week, or do you just blow it all out?
We just say blasting it all the time, with the exception of one of the things that we're going to go into that plan is going to be pop buys. So you're not doing 200 pop buys in a week. So you can stagger those, you know, based on the size of your farm and how aggressive you want to be in there. But yeah, the passive touch points, the marketing, we recommend doing them all at once. The main reason being, you know, for us as an example, we have a bulk mail permit, so we can send out more as long as we get as soon as we get over 200 pieces. It's a little bit cheaper. So, any other questions? Any questions on Zoom in Zoom world? All right, so let's talk about using, again, how we can use some tools that we have to help you choose that farm. Because a lot of people, you know, be like, yeah, I think my neighborhood would be good to farm. And then you look at the tax records and you look at the MLS data and it just doesn't support that. So the tools that you can use to get that done are going to be, again, right in your MLS are going to be 2 of them. The first one is going to be the CRS tax records. If you're an experienced agent and you were used to the old tax system and you haven't looked at the new tax record system, look at it today. That can be part 1 of your homework, is to go look at the CRS tax records, because the prospecting data in there is really good. Number 2 is going to be your MLS. That's where we're going to look up the number of houses that have sold. So we're going to look at the activity in that neighborhood. And then finally, in your handout there and in the chat box on the Zoom is going to be a calculation of that tool that we're going to go over and exercise together to make sure that the ROI is there for your farm. So the first tool, and I'm going to stop that share and go out to MLS. All right, so in MLS, if you go to the menu and you scroll down on the left-hand side, you're going to see the section that says taxes. Under there is going to be CRS prospecting. Click on that link. That's going to bring you into that new CRS tax record tool that we have in our MLS, where you're going to be able to find out the number of houses in your neighborhood to make sure, so you get your count to start your process. So a couple different ways that you can do this. If you have, the first thing you're going to do is make sure you choose the county. So if you are in either of our MLSs, they actually do have access to each other's MLSs and multiple counties in there. So for North Carolina agents, all of the counties that we would realistically service are going to be in there. And then for South Carolina agents, you can look up tax records for the 4 or 5 counties that they regularly service down there. And then the first thing you're going to do, so you'll see this box right here where you can choose to search by multiple numbers of criteria. So I'm going to use my neighborhood as an example to show you how to pull up that data. So you can start typing in a subdivision name. So I live in Willowick, and you'll see that it sorts by owner's name, street address, and then it goes down to subdivisions. So if I do subdivision, starts with Willowick, it's going to find 148 properties. So that's going to be one of the data points that you would use, again, to see the size of the farm. So in this example, if we were looking at that 200, we have found properties of 148. So that is the easiest method if you're going to just a subdivision. And you have reliable tax information on the subdivision, because sometimes the subdivision names are often there. Yes, Kristen?
Quick question.
Yeah.
If you have a subdivision you want to farm that's say 1,000 and it's not in your desired 200 to 500, you suggest what do you?
You could then go to what Brian was talking about with last, home ownership X number of years, or the other way, if your subdivision, maybe it's multiple subdivisions because there aren't they don't get to that 200 to 500. You can then also search if you don't have, if that doesn't give you a number that you want, another way to search would be to find an address. Like I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And let's say I wanted to do this area right here instead, and this is like 3 different subdivisions, but I would consider it one neighborhood. You can then use a draw tool on it instead. So if you do draw, and then you can do circle, radius, and this goes to what you were talking about, Kim. If you want to use your radius, so you can do a radius tool, or I like freehand myself because you can clearly see neighborhoods, and then you just draw your map.
Would you not do the full 1,000? It would just be pretty expensive.
I would be very expensive again, and it'd be hard to manage. So like as we talk about doing like events and pop-bys, it's gonna be really hard to manage a 1,000-person farm. So then you can choose that subdivision, and again, same kind of thing, 141. So neither of those by themselves would get to what we would recommend as a great type criteria.
Do you have a recommended preference on, if you've never farmed before, would you recommend doing like the radial type of farming, or actually start with like a subdivision area?
It depends on the size. Like if it's gonna have enough meat there to get there, then you can do. I mean, you can definitely do larger. It's just gonna limit your ability to, like I said, to do all those other touch points. Again, throwing a neighborhood party for 1,000 people is gonna be harder, and then having some commonality between people, because we all know that you can go one neighborhood over and it's a completely different. Then now you're into demographics that are living there potentially. So that's the CRS tool for that. How many people have used that tool? Show of hands.
Not on the tax forms.
All right. Well, there's a great tool for you there. And again, it's free. You can export up to 5,000 labels per month using this tool. As you can see, we use a lot of them for our golden letters. So I've only got 400 left. So that's the first thing you would use that's the first tool, would be that CRS prospecting tool. And then the second one is going to be, again, right inside your MLS, you're going to start looking at the number of sales in there. So I'm going to go to quick search for that. And then again, using that same information, you can look up your neighborhood by subdivision, or again, you could use the radius tool for that as well. but I'm gonna use the creek at Willowwick and the park at Willowwick. They're kind of right across the street from each other. And then I'm gonna look at sold information. I'm gonna go up to my change in my status to just closed, and gonna go up to, so there's been 15 houses out of 150 that have sold in the last 12 months. So this one, as an example, we'll go into this, into the next exercise. Phenomenal turnover, as you'll see, but the question would then be, is it a big enough farm? So you can, those are the two tools that you can immediately use just to identify a farm really quick and dirty. Yes?
What's the ratio you're looking for?
You're gonna look for at least 6% as your turnover ratio. We'll go over that in just 30 seconds on how to calculate out the ROI and why that calculation, that methodology is used. So that's, hopefully people know how to use MLS. If you haven't, attend an MLS training put on by our wonderful Vic, Jody. She will help you learn how to search for sold houses. But that's just really quick math right there. That's not going into the full calculating your ROI method that we're gonna go into next.
Was that, how far back did you go?
I went 12 months. Yep, sorry, thank you for that. Yep. All right. So the next thing we are going to go into here is that actual calculation tool. So in your handout there, and for those in the Zoom, in the chat box, there's a handout in there. You're going to flip to the sheet that says Farming 101, calculate your ROI. So again, I promised you some math. Well, regrettably, I promised you some math. We're going to do it together to make it a little more manageable. Again, you're looking at spending thousands of dollars here potentially on a really detailed marketing farming plan. So you want to make sure that your numbers work out for you. So everybody have that sheet or have it handy? Okay. So my handwriting is going to be awful, but follow along with me here. Get your calculator ready, and we'll be able to get this all to see if it all makes sense. So the first thing you're going to do is using that CRS info. And you back up your, you see the number of houses that are in there. We're going to say for this example that the farm that we chose or that we're looking at is going to be 300 houses. That's going to be the first thing. So on box.
Chris, I don't think it's in the chat. We're not seeing the link in the chat.
Even, okay, maybe it's not, it was there before you guys got here. Thank you, Kathy. Hopefully you're seeing it now.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, so the first thing, you're going to put the number of houses in there, and then going to the MLS data, you are going to look at the number of houses sold. So let's say in this example, there were 22 houses that sold in the last 12 months. To quickly calculate your ROI, you're going to divide B by A. So what do you get when you divide B divided by A? 7.3, right? Something like that. And then right underneath that, we have some notes there for you. So the target you're going to look for is at least 6%. So you want at least a 6% turnover, with a couple of exceptions. With number one exception being if you know it's a new neighborhood and it just hasn't turned over yet, you might want to start planting your seeds for that. That's one. Ding that down. That's a farming cheesy analogy. So whoever's keeping score, I got one cheesy analogy there. So if so again, that's one thing that can override that 6% kind of turnover ratio would be that it's a newer development and it's primed for turnover very soon. And the one I used there as an example with Willowwick, those houses between the two subdivisions are between 7 and 10 years old. Well, 3 to 10 years old. And if you looked at, again, we were at like a 10% turnover. 12 months ago, you wouldn't have even thought about farming that neighborhood because there wasn't any sales in there. But it's to that point where the turnover is starting to look there. So that's the kind of little caveat that I would use to that 6% as a turnover. Yes.
Is there a certain time frame that does create turnover, 3 to 5, 7 years that you look?
And that's where you're going back to the five things to choose a neighborhood. It's that knowledge. You've got to know what about it. Like, so as an example with Willowick, very popular for people like myself moving to the area, don't really know the area, brand new houses, great school to school. You know, it's a great place to plant people for when they first move here. And then 3 to 5 years, they're like, oh, well, I can be here, get the same school district, maybe it's a little older house, but I get a bigger yard. So that's where your knowledge is going to come into play in choosing that. And then those are going to be your personal exceptions to kind of, you know, because if I'm going to get a 10% return, that's going to take me maybe 18 months to get really going in there. That's going to, in the long run, outplay that lower turnover at the beginning. So that's where just that knowledge is going to just kind of do it. But if you were just looking at straight, you know, is this a good farm? 6% is the number you want to look at. All right, so that's part one. So you're like, okay, 7.3, good turnover. Now let's calculate the potential income that we can have it. So that's part two. We're going to say, again, so part two, line D is going to be the same as B. So we're saying there are 22 potential sales in that neighborhood. Line E, we are going to use what it would take to be considered a dominant agent in that neighborhood. And the number you want to use as a guideline for that is going to be 30%. If you can get 30% market share in especially the bigger farm you get, of market share dominance, you would be considered the dominant agent in that area. So let's use 30% as our target for that. Again, if you wanted to calculate, you know, a little more conservatively, you could go down to 20, 25% for that. But for today, let's use 30%. We're going to be the dominant agent in this market. And then next thing we're going to look at is we're going to say, okay, how many then potential sales do I have in that farm on an annual basis? So to do that, you're going to take D times E, and you're going to round that. So if anybody have that, let's come up with 7, right? You round it around. So we're saying there are 7 potential sales for me if I were to become the dominant agent in that neighborhood. Any questions? I know real estate agents.
I guess, is that a good number?
We're gonna get there.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the price point and everything are gonna come into play too. So 7, I mean, if I could bump another 7 sales into my pipeline in a year, I'd say it's pretty good. Do that year after year after year. That'd be pretty good. So let's just say that, so the next thing, again, going back to the things to consider when choosing a farm is going to be your price point. So let's say this neighborhood that we're choosing is $300,000 price point. That's going to go on line G.
If we look on MLS, I think you'll go back a certain amount of time, because you know, obviously prices now are
Right.
very different than they were.
Yeah, I mean, I would use, again, if you looked at that same data for the 12-month period, you could use that, because again, the styles of the houses are going to be different. But if you have enough data, then you're going to get a better average. It's not going to be skewed as much by, you could definitely use median as well. But, and then just for the exercise purposes, we know there are agents who do better. We know there are agents who do worse. Let's say we average getting 2.75 as our commission in that neighborhood. So then we're going to do the potential, total potential per sale. You're going to take the G times the H. So 300,000 times 2.75%. What do we got? Someone want to help me? 8250. So that's our per average transaction in that neighborhood. And then finally, to see what our potential income is in this neighborhood, we're going to take the 8250 times the number of sales. And what do we come up with?
57,750.
Is everybody with me so far? At least the ones in the room. It's harder to do online for sure. All right, so now we're saying $57,000 potential income in this farm. But we still don't know if it's a good rate of return. We don't know if it makes sense based on how much we're going to spend to get that number, to get that. So that's where part 3 is going to come into play. All right. So the first thing we're going to look at is our postcard campaign. So this is a campaign that is specifically targeting the farm. You're sending this on a regular basis every month, mixing your message up with real estate, something in the area, something personal, getting a mixed message so you're not just, look how awesome I am, look how awesome I am, look how awesome I am. You want to mix it up with, here's some stuff to do in the area, here's some things that about me and my team. Oh, and here's some sales statistics too. So a campaign like that, you're going to take the number of houses. So going back to the flip side, I'm not going to flip it around, but that was 300. So we're going to say 300 times $1.04 is our average cost per postcard. And then times, if you're doing them every month, times 12 months. What do you guys have for a number there? I know Nancy has the number, but she doesn't want to give all the answers away.
3744.
3744, thank you, sir. All right, now the next thing you're looking at are going to be pop buys. So again, who's familiar with what a pop buy is?
Is that just to stop in and say hi?
Yeah, yep.
You give them a little yes.
Give them a little something. I mean, for me, the cheesier the better. You know, if you get something, you tie it into, like, and we'll have some examples in there too. You know, which peeps do you know who are looking to buy or sell real estate? You know, and it's a silly little peep, and it's around Easter. So the cheesier and the cornier the tagline you can get with that. What's that?
That one your farming reference.
Yes. Oh, yes, chop that up. I'll get plenty coming up. And then, so that's what you do. And so you, again, going back to the size of the farm, this is where the size of the farm and being able to walk that farm comes into play. Because if it's 1,000 people and you've got to touch them, you know, on a semi-regular basis, it could get expensive. And that could be your full-time job doing that. So we recommend, like, so looking at a 300-person farm, if I wanted to touch them with a cheesy little gift every year, I take 25 a month, and I do that for 12 months. That's going to let me touch every single person in that farm one time with a cheesy pop-by gift. So then you're going to take 25 times 5. That's the average cost of what we're calculating out. There'll be some months that'll be lower, some months that'll be higher, and then times the 12 months. So who has that answer for me? 1,500, right?
So you're saying an average Popeye of $5?
Yeah, because you're gonna have some that are $1, and then some, you know, as an example, the school supply one that we have, that might be a little more because you're putting pencils and bottle of wine, that kind of stuff. So $1,500 for that. And then the next one is going to be these farming events. So we're going to recommend that you're doing some kind of event in the farm, and we'll go into detail a little bit on that in just a few minutes, but those would be just something specific to that geographic farm, whether it's a barbecue or Easter egg hunt. You know, we'll go over some ideas and brainstorm some other ideas around that as well. We're going to say at least 2 of those a year, and we're going to say it's going to cost you at least $750 for each one of those. So we're spending.
Side note, when you're saying like you guys do the farming support,
Mhm.
does it include ideas for farming events as well, or is it just the material for it?
Just the material
Okay.
for it, yeah. We don't have the manpower to execute your farming event.
I just wasn't sure if y'all
Yes.
have those ideas.
We're
in
not,
there
we have
before
ideas.
you
I can
go.
definitely share ideas. And then the next thing is going to be, you're still going to want to hit this neighborhood with your evidences of success. So those are your sold postcards and stuff like that. So for N, we're going to take, going back to hitting every house in the farm with a postcard for just sold at about 300 would be about 95 cents for that, times the number of sales. So if you had, going back to F, I think that was 7, if my brain is working correctly. So to calculate the money you would then spend on a sold, so just what this is doing is every time you sell a house in this neighborhood, you're sending out a just sold postcard. So that's 300 each time, times the 90 cents, times the number of sales in that neighborhood. So listings that you sold in that neighborhood is going to equal how much you're spending on just sold postcards. And what do we have for that? Sounds about right. Yes. All right. And then the wild card, and this then comes, the next thing is, can you go out and find a partner to help you defer some of these costs? And this is a great opportunity to go to your marketing person, to your maybe your mortgage person, your attorney, whoever you have in your phone that could potentially help contribute to either the events, the postcards, or anything like that, to help defer some of the costs. So you would subtract that out of there. For our example today, we're going to say, I don't know anybody, I don't have a sponsor for these postcards. And that should come up with how much it's going to cost you to spend to get 7 sales in this neighborhood. What do you guys come up with for that? What's the total spend? $86.34. I think that's the math that I had on my worksheet. Okay, so you're saying it's going to cost $8,600 to make $57,000. So now the final component is calculating your ROI. So to do that, you're going to say, again, the potential income, which was in our example, $57,750 divided by that is going to equal what?
6.69.
6.69. So your return on your investment is going to be $6.69 for every dollar you spend. What would you guys say to that? If I could give you, if you gave me $1 and I gave you $6.69 back every time, what would you do with that? Would you say that's a good investment or a bad? Yeah, I'd say it's a pretty good investment. So that's how you would calculate your ROI on a farm. You're looking for at least a 4-to-1 ROI. That is kind of the rule of thumb really that we use in real estate for any marketing.
A what?
4-to-1. And the only reason that you even go that low is referrals. I don't know a person in the world who would turn down a referral, and that's really only a 4-to-1 ratio if you're giving 25% away. Yes, Kristen.
2 quick questions.
Yeah.
So the first one is, if you're in a neighborhood that doesn't allow solicitation, is there something you can do to replace the Popeyes? And number 2, I'm just curious about like with, everybody being pretty comfortable using the internet and social media and things like that. Are we also looking at social media versus a direct mail campaign?
We don't have any components in there for social media, mainly because, well, you could do some things to hotwire around that, but even like, retargeting on Facebook as an example. You could get them there with like a QR code on your postcard or something, but you can't target that small anymore on Facebook. Back in the good old days of Facebook where it was, you could target anybody based on anything. You could get down to the specific neighborhood almost. Now the closest radius you can get is 15 miles. So you can't target anything less than 15 miles geographically on Facebook anymore. If you were doing a demographic farm, you could do a little more targeting as far as very broad-based demographics, but not like as specific as it used to be. Now, what I will add to that, and this is kind of farming 201 maybe, would be one of the recommendations would be like a neighborhood page. So you create a neighborhood page for wherever you farm, or you get into whatever neighborhood page that they already have, because most of them already have like mine has a Facebook page that's all the residents in there. That would be a way to start capturing that social media audience for sure. And then you can target off of people in that group. But even then, your targeting is only going to hit a certain subset of that, which is where the direct mail can get to everybody. And then, maybe a little bit of a gray area, in my opinion, whether Popeyes would be solicitation.
That's what I was gonna ask. You're not selling anything.
Yeah, that's pretty gray. I wouldn't come out of the gate with that. Like, I wouldn't be like my first thing on there, but as you start building relationships, you might be a little more easier to door knock in there.
Yeah, I just know, like, I've seen on Nextdoor, people, they have bring.com,
Mhm,
and I just think the door knocking is become
Yeah,
less prevalent.
right, and that's where, so that's where the combination of everything comes in. So if I'm throwing an Easter egg hunt for this neighborhood and I'm doing a barbecue for everybody who's moving into the neighborhood, and they then see me knocking at their door, hopefully, they're gonna start, you start building a relationship with them. It's through the whole campaign. Well, great question, thank you. All right, any other questions on the calculation method and what equates to what I would consider a good ROI? All right, so let's dig a little deeper onto some of what you're doing to plant the seeds in your farm. Chalk that one up, please, too, Nancy. That's a definite cheesy farming analogy there, planting seeds, come on. All right, so one of the things you can do, and it's in your packet there, is just a sample intro letter. Again, you can change this up as much or as little as you want to. The one that's in there is designed for a neighborhood you live in, so you're kind of introducing yourself maybe as the real estate expert in that neighborhood. The rest of your touch plan could be, like I said, the monthly or bi-monthly kind of a postcard campaign that we drew out there. Quick side note too, I had to Google this myself because I didn't know what the exact term was for it, but really one of those weird terms. Bi-monthly can be twice a month or every other month. You get the same word. I don't know. I had to Google it because I didn't know. I wanted to make sure I got the right usage in there, but bi-monthly is, so that's every month or every other month for postcards. You could get away with probably touching it every other month to help defer those costs down a little bit. It's going to take you a little longer to dominate that market.
Do you think it's a little excessive on 2 a month?
No, it's every other month. Monthly
Okay.
or every other month.
Well, I guess, do you think it's excessive monthly then? Because when you were saying bi-monthly too, like twice a month too.
No, bi-monthly is every other month.
Every other.
It's either or. That's the whole side story. Come on, Kim, stay with me.
I am, but I was thinking the bi-monthly thinking twice a month. But do you think it's excessive going month to month, or do you think it's better to keep doing those touches?
I would say it depends on what again, probably some other variables in there. Is there a dominant agent that you're trying to supplant?
Mm-hmm.
How quickly do you want to dominate in there too? Because as inventory is going to start, hopefully, maybe we'll start creeping up. As an example, with my neighborhood, we had like 6 signs in the last 6 weeks where we had none before. If you wait till now to farm, you're probably going to be behind on that. So that's going to come down to A, your budget, B, your it's going to take you longer to dominate. You're not going to get to 7 sales in a neighborhood if you're doing it every other month,
Okay.
in my opinion.
So monthly is the best way to go.
That would be the recommend, and especially to start. And then the next thing you can do for your touch plan is going to be those events. So we'll go over some more ideas around that, but those are going to be something you have specifically for that neighborhood to get either everybody together or multiple people together. Pop-bys we talked about, those are the cheesy little things. And then your evidence of success is going to be your sold postcard. So again, you're not beating them over the head with real estate. You've got your messaging mixed up, and then you also do need to show the evidence of success in there too. Any questions on kind of what that touch plan can look like? Again, you're going to have to customize it for what's going to work for you, for your budget, and how quickly you want to dominate the neighborhood. And again, those variables that we can't just say is exactly this, and that's like is there a dominant agent in there already?
Theoretically, send out your just sold postcard in lieu of your monthly informational postcard.
You definitely could, yeah, absolutely. And you'll see from the campaign that we're rolling out, our touch points aren't they're not beating you over the head with real estate, and you've still got to get some real estate information in there too, other than just giving them a bunch of cool information. So here's a couple examples of some pop-bys. So again, what you would do with these is you would just print out these on a label. On the back side, maybe you attach your business card, and then you're attaching it to whatever that cheesy gift would be. So the example with these two, giving you Irish luck, we hope you win at least $1. So that would be attached to a scratch ticket as an example. And again, there's your pop-by for the month of March. As you get back into school, we thought this might help with the back to school chaos, and that could be a little care package put together with some pencils. Again, attaching your business card to the back, and you pop by 20 or 25 of those. That would be one if you knew who the kids were, like who has school age kids in the neighborhood. That would be a better pop by for them. These kind of pop bys are also going to be really good for just your natural sphere and past clients. So those don't have to be just for use in a geographic farm. Those would be good for just anybody, just popping by. Hey, I just stopped by, was in your neighborhood and just wanted to stop by with this. So pop bys you can use outside of just your farming campaign, but it can also be used for this as well. Any questions on any of those things?
I always have questions.
Yeah.
So if you were actually doing Popeyes in your farm and you were saying in here an average, do 25 a month to try to hit the entire farm area, how many times would you be touching with Popeyes per house a year is basically?
I mean, if you can get to
Every 3
one,
months or
I mean,
something?
if you can get to, I mean, again, a farm at 300, and if you're hitting 25 a month, it's gonna take the entire year to hit all of them.
So just one of those and then having postcards the rest.
And
of the
postcards, and I
Okay.
mean, if you could get to 2 a year, that would be even better, but now you're at 600 touches, and we wanna keep it consistent. You wanna keep it and manageable too. And that's where, again, going back to the size of the farm, you don't wanna take on too much there too. But yeah, so that's gonna be your pop bys where you are working that farm and really, again, you've got the seeds planted. Now you are watering those seeds and helping them grow. All right, next thing we're gonna talk about is your secret fertilizer. And that is going to be your events. This is where you can really, again, supercharge your getting in front of so many people at once. And the recommendation would be at least 2 of these in your farm to become that dominant agent. But if you can get more, that's even better. So just some ideas that I've seen used around those would be an Easter egg hunt as one of those. Where you just kind of, if you've got like a common area or a place that you could, clubhouse or something like that, where you can host that. Again, hopefully as things continue to open up. I've seen pumpkin patches where you just, again, throw a bunch of pumpkins, small little pumpkins out in the field and let all the families come by and grab those. You want to go next level. Every time you sell a house and maybe you get an unrepresented buyer that buys that house, you can throw a little housewarming party. That's like a double win for that, because now you get into the neighborhood or have that party for the neighborhood. They get to meet some of their new neighbors, and then hopefully they also invite some of their sphere, so you can get some referrals from them as well. So that could be like a win-win-win kind of event. Another popular one that I've seen is a paper shredding event, where you can rent one of those paper shredding machines and say, hey, on April 30th, we're going to have a paper shredding truck. You can get rid of all your tax documents now that your taxes are filed. Some other good ones are just a cookie swap, and that would be where you are, just again, toward the holiday season, people come with their best ideas for cookies. And then the final one, and you guys could get creative on this as well, or if anybody has any other ones they've seen, would be just like a neighborhood party, bouncy houses, cookout, cul-de-sac kind of party. Again, just to get as many people as you can, get in front of them. Hopefully you get a sponsor with you as well, and you can really defer the cost. I remember one of the parties that we had, it was more specific to a past client party, but with my sponsors that I had for that, I actually paid nothing for the event. So I was able to get in front of all my past clients, and it cost me nothing out of pocket, because I partnered with my insurance agent, my lender, my attorney, and they were all very happy to get in front of my past clients in Sphere, and that event cost me nothing. Any other events that you guys have seen you want to share with the group that you think could work for a neighborhood kind of event?
Does anybody talk cake party?
Cake party? Definitely.
You're gonna go by UNCW and
I
sort
was
of that area?
Sorry, I was going back to my youth.
All right, and here are just some other sample ideas for kind of going back to those themes. So on the left, this is actually what we're mapping out. Actually, these are both what we're mapping out for the services that we have. And the first one would be your postcard. So again, we're mixing that message. We're not saying all real estate. What we're doing is we're saying quarterly. So January, we're going to be market stats. February, we're going to be the top local places for desserts. We're starting this in July. So the first month, if you were to choose to use us, so the top 5 places to visit in North Carolina. August 1 is going to be 5 simple steps to improve your home value. You'll see that, an example of that in your handout as well. And then on the right-hand side are just some ideas without the cheesy messages for your pop-by ideas. So again, they're all themed based on seasonality, based on kind of what's going on in the world at that time of year. And again, to me, the cheesier the better with these. I mean, I think the one for extra, I forgot what it was, but it was really bad. But it was just going the extra mile for your work or for your referrals or something like that. But you know, that's just the ideas that we have for some sample campaigns. Any questions? Hopefully you guys got some good screenshots of that. This is recorded as well, so you'll be able to watch the playback. Go to like minute 50 for that if you just want to chat that. What's that?
I had a delayed camera reaction.
It's Kim, I can mess with her.
Technologically challenged. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any questions on anything we've gone over so far? All right, so Elevate Leverage Services is here. Again, hopefully you guys are starting to notice that we are here. We want to be that leverage for you so that you can go out and really continue to do what you do best, which is to build those relationships and to just go out and sell houses and write contracts. Agents tend to get bogged down when they start deploying something like this, and then they never get to either selling or they never get to this campaign. So what we have rolled out, again, we're starting this in July, is going to be a done-for-you campaign for farming. So the 2 main components of that are going to be our postcard campaigns, where these are all pre-designed. We've already mapped out the year. As an example, you're seeing on the screen here. This is what our one for July is going to look like. So we went on to TripAdvisor, and these are the top 5 places for people to visit in North Carolina. Again, for TripAdvisor, we didn't come up with it, but it gives them all of the places that they can visit. July, vacation time, perfect time of year, we thought, to get out there with a message of the top 5 places to visit. So we've got that all mapped out. And what we're doing is quarterly hitting them with sales statistics. Every other one is, you know, about yourself. For November, as an example, we have like a Thanksgiving story, all stuff like that. So these would go out with your branded information. If you're on a team or have specific more team customization, we can do that for you as well. But they'll all have your headshot, your contact information, and more importantly, or most importantly, they all have a call to action on them as well. So some of them are, you know, themed to the season that it is. Others are more standard, like thinking about selling your house, but they're all going to have a call to action on them. Any questions on that?
Could you add more to those to make them more personal as well? Like if you have your call to action right there, could you add something specific about your team or who you are to make it more personal?
We have to minimize the customization of it until you get like your branding on it, like your new logo could go on there for sure. But if you wanted to change your message up or the content at all, then we have a custom. We can design a custom campaign for you too. Yeah, any customization of it, be outside of your headshot and your team logo, is a design fee, which is $75 for our design fee.
It's 75 in addition.
Yep, and that's just for the design. Yep. And then the second component that we have is going to be, we will take those pop buys and we will assemble them, stick your business card to the back of them, and assemble them and buy the cheesy gifts that are going to go with it. And then those will be ready on a monthly basis. You'll order a certain amount of them, and it'll become on you to come and pick them up and get them distributed. So We got about 5 minutes. In your flyer, there is a pricing structure that we have. So I believe the last page is going to be the rollout of the services. And then the back side is going to be the cost associated with those services. The pop-bys are going to be variable depending on what the content of the pop-by is. We know that the minimum on those is going to be $5. And that, again, that's including the assembly, the printing, and your business cards you'll have to supply. I'm going to stop my screen here. Is there anybody in Zoom world that has any kind of questions, or just anybody in the room that has any questions on what we went over today?
So Myrtle Beach, do we have to come to Wilmington to pick up our pop-up packages?
No, we'll get them down to Laura.
Just kidding.
I'm coming down at least once a month now, so we'll get them.
Good.
To, and we can get your mailing addresses for your neighborhood.
If you were trying to do it on your own, what is the best way about going and getting all the mailing addresses?